fighting, but when they hold a grudge, shit, they don't forget. No females forget. Let's just be clear here. But, black chicks, I notice, they'll bang it out and they'll keep their fucking distance. But biracials, they'll... So I notice, it makes me wonder, are biracials naturally bipolar? Are they just naturally bipolar? Because it's like, my mom is like that. You know what I mean? When she used to get beat up in the hood, dated my father, she would still talk her fucking shit. She's even like that in my mom's side of the family. My grandma doesn't even speak to her. Nobody speak to her. My mom is all to herself. And I'm all to myself too. I don't speak to my mom or dad's side. But my mom is an outsider too. And I'm diagnosed with bipolar type 1. My mom is diagnosed with bipolar type 2. She was born with it. And I was born with bipolar type 1. So bipolar type 2 was a lesser stage. And bipolar type 1 is a more severe stage. And I'm born with bipolar type 1. I can flip. You know what I mean? But I don't go crazy. Like, I don't do crazy shit. You know what I mean? The most severe thing I've done being older, let me think. Oh, shit, I remember.
Yeah, coming from someone who specifically was trying to claim they weren't mentally ill, like, there were so many different times I've seen this person in lives try to claim that they weren't mentally ill. And it's not really a very good thing at all because, I remember at one point this person specifically said that they only took vitamins and they didn't take medication. Yeah. Somebody who has bipolar disorder specifically, it's really dangerous for them to be off of their meds. Like, they can kill other people, they can kill themselves, they can specifically, have too much of a substance abuse issue. They can have a lot of other different problems in their life, basically, because of the bipolar disorder. It's nothing to sneeze at. I remember at one point I actually had a roommate who had bipolar disorder. And the crazy things that would come out of her mouth, it was through the roof, honestly. For one, let's be completely honest here. You had one situation, like, I remember, where my roommate who had bipolar, she would send nude photos out to random men for no apparent reason and harass them just because she was on a mania binge, basically. She would have situations where she gets so emotional at different people and get so angry that she would want to basically have, she said she would have a whole bunch of nails or something on her hand and drive a nail up their arm so then they bleed out or something like that. She said basically, they tend to be very unstable people who want to hurt people, want to hurt themselves. And this can happen in their mania stage, and this can happen in their depression stage. A lot of people will focus on their suicidal ideation, but nobody focuses on the fact that these are homicidal people too, and they do think about killing other people when they're in mania or if they're in depression. I specifically was around someone like this, and how it works with people with bipolar disorder. With people like me, we tend to hear a lot of their, insanity and their mental instability. Because for me, I'm a very quiet person, And I think some people think that's an act. No, I'm naturally very, very quiet. I don't see the point in talking to people if it's not really going to result in anything positive. And I'm very good at reading the room, but there's one thing. I do not look to please. So that's kind of my personality. I guess that could have to do with the fact that for me, I grew up very isolated. So, that's my perspective. It's built my personality, honestly. But because of that, because I'm a very quiet person, I've always noticed that a lot of the time, a lot of people with like bipolar disorder specifically have a situation where they specifically want to um, like talk 1,000 words per minute, and they want to do it for hours on edge. You know, I guess I'm a good soundboard for that because I'm very quiet and I don't talk a lot like that, you know, and I'll take in what you're saying, and just kind of like let it be. I'm not really a judger. I don't judge people like that generally. Um, like if I judge someone, I keep it in. I don't really judge them and tell them because I figure most of the time people do not like to be criticized. But anyway, in this situation specifically, she was specifically like talking to me for hours on end, and I was hardly even giving her any feedback. I mean, after a while, I had gone back to sleep, and for hours on end, she was still talking to me. That's how some bipolar people are. They're not very stable, or they don't have a sense of reading the room really in their situations because they have so much mania that it kind of makes them work on steroids, almost like their mind is on steroids, or like it's really in a heightened state. And I feel sorry for them, honestly, because it's like they can't find any peace. It seems like there's always very high up there or very low, you know, but they're never like specifically um, like normal, stable individuals, you know, and they do need medication, they need counseling, they need therapy. I think that, isn't it lithium that they take? I'm not really sure what medication they specifically take, but I think that, no, I think they take different types of medication actually. Don't they need a medication for their mania and their depression? Or how does this work? I don't really know. But, to be talking about mental illness is weird. Like, you never talk about mental illness if you've been diagnosed with a mental illness. Like, for me personally, I have been to therapists, and I'd never been diagnosed with anything. My father died before I was born, and I still wasn't diagnosed with anything. I mean, I didn't have the best childhood, no. Like, I was, for one, isolated as a child, and most of the time, because I'd always be like kind of scared of people um, judging me for being isolated as a kid and stuff, I'd always be really shy. And honestly, I've come a long way. Let's just be honest with that. Because I mean, like when I first did videos here, I was extremely scared because I always felt like, you know, people are going to be mean, people are going to try and attack you and try and be aggressive and everything because, that's how people are. And you kind of feel like, oh, people are going to be, problematic or whatever. And I kind of tried to work through my own problems with, my childhood, being isolated and so forth. But, when it comes to mental illness, I've never been diagnosed with anything. That's just the truth, you know. But I do think, you can be mentally stable and have a bad childhood. Yeah. Even though I wouldn't say my childhood was anything similar to this girl. From what she's saying, she went to foster care, she was abused by her parents, and that her mother was mentally unstable. I didn't have any of those problems in my childhood. It was just specifically being isolated, being homeschooled most of my life, my mother being super religious, and that's basically it. But, it's kind of like, I just find it interesting with her because it's like she was trying to stigmatize mental illness. And it's like, I don't even stigmatize mental illness. But, I mean, like, you specifically have a mental illness. I don't. And you're specifically out here telling people that you were diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and you have a very bad version of bipolar disorder, according to you. So, I mean, from my perspective, it's kind of like, I don't think you should stigmatize it. I don't think you should have hate for what you were diagnosed with. You can't help how you were born. You can't help that you have a mental illness. You know, that's how God made you. But what you need to do is work through it so then you can come to a middle and feel happy, you know? Do people with bipolar disorder actually feel happy? I feel like they never do. Like they're never content because they're always up or they're very down. Now, there's another part of this that I wanted to address also. Was specifically you try to stigmatize and try and say other people were schizophrenic or whatever. And it's interesting because it's like, you do know that bipolar disorder is like really close to schizophrenia, right? You guys have hallucinations and you have delusions. I don't see how specifically you're any different than someone who has schizophrenia. I must say that actually it's harder to get along with someone with bipolar disorder than schizophrenia because usually with schizophrenia, that stuff is in their head, right? Like, I've seen some people who have schizophrenia back in college. There were like two people, I think, that had schizophrenia. One person, I think, had schizophrenia. And the other one said something along the lines that they had something similar to schizophrenia, which was weird to me. Because it was like, I don't think you can have a powerful form of schizophrenia, but I'm not really familiar with schizophrenia like that, you know. But yeah, from my experience, they didn't seem as erratic and crazy as people with bipolar disorder. And people with bipolar disorder hallucinate and they hear things. And they specifically, have delusions. So, I mean, like, on that basis, I would say that you are, I guess, a schizo, but honestly, maybe even worse because you have bipolar disorder, which is like a more violent version of it. Either way, your best bet is to get help for it. Not try and think like being mentally ill is such a bad thing. It's not any different than, for example, having a health issue. You could have health issues, for example, or be prone to cancer. You know, um, if you don't get help for those kinds of things and you don't go to the right doctors to manage it, you will die. And you can say basically the same thing, especially with bipolar disorder, because they do have a high rate of suicidal ideation. I know people focus so much on suicidal ideation with people with bipolar disorder, but it's like, it's not just that. They also have a lot of homicidal ideation, you know, and they get very violent very quickly too. Almost in a way where, it gets so scary that it almost seems like it's more extreme than someone who is specifically like on drugs or something, in my opinion. People on drugs seem unstable, but it seems like people with bipolar disorder get in a rage almost in the same fashion, if not worse, sometimes. I guess because it's natural, you know. But yeah, anyway, that's all I wanted to say here as far as stigmatizing mental illness and then being diagnosed with mental illness. Um, you shouldn't do that to yourself. It's not really beneficial to actually healing yourself and actually trying to manage your bipolar disorder. And you should get on medication. I don't think you can manage that without medication. I know you've said in the past that you didn't take medication. You need to take medication. It'll help you actually see things more clearly and properly. So, that's all I have to say in this video. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, comment down below, and have a great day. Bye, guys.